How you doing, folks? You're watching Onward with Onrie Live, and I'm your host, Onrie Compen. Today, I got two excellent guests in the house with me. We're going to be taking a little bit of a detour from bringing on comic book guests for a moment, and I am bringing on two men who I admire tremendously. These are men who work in with law enforcement and in law enforcement, and today we're going to be talking about self-governance and the importance of basically being aware of your surroundings. And as we're starting to see restrictions lifted throughout the country and things are starting to kind of like get back to some state of normalcy, it's important for us to understand that all the things that there's more to what's going on in the world right now than what we're seeing on the news. So it is my sincere pleasure to welcome Master George Buruian and Al Ramos. Gentlemen, how you all doing?
How's everybody doing, guys?
So for those of us who don't know who you guys are, do you mind telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do? George, we'll start with you.
Well, my name is George Buruian. I am the owner and head instructor of Krav Maga compound in Northbrook. I've been doing martial arts for over 40 years now. I've been training and competing all over the world. And it is my pleasure to be here in your podcast. Hopefully we can have a little bit of fun and we can give some knowledge to people out there. And that's pretty much it.
Excellent. Al.
How you doing? I'm glad to be on your show. It's an honor. Welcome, George. I'm a Chicago police officer. My name is Al Ramos. Went on 24 years of service. I've been involved with martial arts for almost 40 years. Been under training under Master George since 2006, and I'm one of his instructors in Alpha Krav Maga compound in Northbrook.
Excellent. All right, now we got the formalities out of the way. So let's just go right to it. Al, I was talking to you about this backstage before we went live. So right now on the news, all we're seeing is COVID-19 this, COVID-19 that. But being in the state of Illinois, in Chicago in particular, we know that there's more to what's going on than what the news is telling us. There are crimes going on all over the place. So what as people who are passing on information, passing on knowledge on to other people, what is your approach right now to what's going on, given the fact that you guys can't actually physically train people?
Well, as far as training right now, we can't train. But as far as crime being down, that's not true. Crime is actually being up. And with our new superintendent saying he's going to say under 300 murders this year, I find it very hard to believe because George can tell you, or I can tell you, my parents coming from a communist country, the hungrier people are, the more willing they are to hurt people to eat or feed their family. So it's going to be survival of the fittest.
Yeah, and just like recently, I remember reading right before this really got crazy in Arlington Heights. There were like two guys who showed up at this house in Arlington Heights, which is a quiet suburb, and for those of you who don't live in the area, and they showed up with guns, and fortunately the owners had guns too, and were able to run them back and stuff, but. As we, George, I noticed that you're teaching people remotely right now, all of your students remotely. What are some of the things that you've been covering, since, part of training is actually being in the ring or not in the ring, but being across from somebody so that you have that real life simulation?
Yep. So right now, because of the lockdown and because everything that's going on, obviously we are very limited in our training. However, my number one thing is empowering people mentally and physically. Because in the end, as we talk about crime and we talk about what's going on in the world out there, right now there is so much negativity coming from the media, coming from all angles, because it's a little bit normal. It's also this pandemic, and it's also people are scared and so forth. However, a strong mindset can help you overcome the adversity. Adversity can be the being sick, God forbid if you get sick. Having a strong mindset allows you or give you more chances to survive whatever you have. being in a self-defense scenario, a strong mindset allows you to overcome or gives you more chances to overcome the situation. So most importantly for us and for me personally is to develop that strong mindset, develop that awareness of your surrounding, develop that never give up mentality. It's so easy to be negative. It's so easy to think, oh my God, this is the end of the world and so forth. However, a strong mindset and a positive mindset, it helps you or gives you more chances to overcome, and in the end allows you to live a better and happier life.
That is absolutely true, and it's not bullshit either. Like, Yi Sun Shin, who I write, my whole career is dedicated to this Korean admiral. He had a saying that those who seek death shall live, and those who seek life shall die. And every time he went into battle, he was always outnumbered. There were no chances whatsoever. And if his men went into those kinds of situations where they would just kind of give up because of the fact that they'd be so intimidated, they'd be dead regardless. So it's important to kind of come in, and that's really what I think you teach at Alpha. Both of you guys teach is, you're in a situation. It's not like someone, it's not like someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I'm about to rob you." They're gonna come in and just do it. And Al, you've seen a whole ton of shit on the street. Being a police officer, how important is it to be ready for these kinds of situations as civilians, especially right now?
Right now, you have to be more than ever more ready than anything. And it's funny, you mentioned about awareness and self-defense. Being that I have been off of work because I was injured, I've had a lot of time to watch a lot of YouTube, and you'd be amazed the kind of crap that self-defense schools are teaching as self-defense. The difference between what we do is realistic self-defense. So if somebody comes to us and says, "Hey, last week I saw this happen," and they address it to Master George, we're actually learning what's going on, not waiting until somebody comes up with something. So we do have a curriculum, but the curriculum changed according to what's going on in the world. I remember an incident where there was people getting attacked with machetes a couple years back, and George addressed it. He didn't, and other schools wouldn't do that. The difference with the Krav Maga, the way we do it is we're realistic, up to date on what's going on in the world. We can't be teaching stuff from 20 years ago because the world evolves and we must evolve with it. Gun techniques now, the way we train them and teach them is completely different than when I got in the system in 2006. And I'm sure George can tell you it's changed since he was first in Krav Maga.
Yep.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting because a lot of people who get into martial arts, I know that when I got into martial arts, it was more because of the fact that it was the traditional aspect of it. But, I think that when martial arts kind of first came about, whenever it was more of like a uniformal thing. But I think that since then, people have evolved and their tactics have changed, and it's important to kind of like stay up with that. George, what is your thinking on the traditions of martial arts?
So, it's funny that you say that about tradition. Initially, martial art was developed for whatever people need at that time. People nowadays, they think that if they dress into a white pajama like 500 years ago, and they teach the move that they were taught 500 years ago, it's called the traditional martial art, and that is the tradition. And a lot of the instructors, unfortunately, they don't want to get out of that. Well, the traditional martial art at that time, it was the modern martial art 500 years ago. But if you compare the way people live their life, including size, 500 years ago and now, we are seeing that people are bigger, stronger, faster. If we are watching athletes all over the world in any kind of sport, right? And we see here in the United States, American football, right? In the last 20 years, people evolve physically, people evolve size-wise, people evolve strength, people evolve speed. To keep the same tactics and training like 500 years ago, it's complete moronic, So our goal is to constantly evolve with whatever the evolution of society is, whatever the needs of the society is. That is why we're reality-based martial art. If we are doing the same technique like 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, things changed. Everything evolved. Cell phone evolved, car evolves, and so forth. it will make no sense for us not to evolve. Now, don't get me wrong, certain things still stay the same, mindset still stays the same, certain techniques still stays the same. However, there are a lot of things that has to change, and a lot of things that we do is training people under stress. So you learn a specific technique, but if you don't test it in an environment that's as close as possible to the reality, obviously keeping people safe, the technique is not going to work, or you're not going to see if the technique works. And that's coming down to building your confidence, seeing and getting empowered, going back to our mindset, right? Getting empowered, knowing that you're able to defend yourself, or at least you have more chances to survive a physical confrontation. And just like anything else, I'm always giving this example to my students. Imagine yourself that you're trying to become a driver, right? And imagine that I'm teaching you the same driving skill that people use in 1920s when they had those old cars and so forth. It will make absolutely no sense today, right?
Right.
Now, of course, certain things, pull the steer with left and right, and certain things are still the same. However, there is so much more evolution that it will make absolutely no sense. The speed is different. The cars are bigger. The streets are wider, and so forth. So you have to evolve based on today's reality.
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, like a couple hours ago, I was just kind of browsing on my Facebook feed, and I came across this video of these two guys in a fight. And one guy just turned around, did like a spinning fist, and just knocked the other guy out because the guy didn't see it. Now, if we're back in the 20s, everybody was fighting in the traditional style in boxing, and there was nothing wrong with it. I mean, a punch is a punch, a kick is a kick. But right. I also like what you said too about how things have changed, because we live in an integrated society of people from all parts of the world. And in some parts of the world, people are, genetically bigger than others, and, you have to kind of account for that. And Al, I'm sure that's the case for you being a police officer. I'm sure you've encountered some pretty big motherfuckers out there on the street.
Oh, absolutely. Here's the thing. I always get older. They always get younger. I don't know how that is, because they always get younger.
And better looking out. Don't forget that.
The thing is that training is the key to anything, and realistic training. I've been in many different martial arts, and I can tell you, the first time I walked into a class with George, what made the difference? I got my lip busted in the class, and I said, wow, this is real. Because we were doing, I forgot what we were doing, and it was actually a doctor that busted my lip open, and after that I signed up, and I've never stopped, because it was real to me. Because, yes, traditional martial arts are awesome. Do we do the kicks of those arts? Yeah. But when it comes out to real fights, watch real fights evolve. The thing about what we do is besides teaching you how to diffuse it and defend it, is to see it coming. That's a big difference, right? Because, it's not when it happens, is it's going to happen. Keeping your hands in your pocket is horrible. I see a lot of police officers, I don't know what kind of training they're doing now, they're not aware. They're not aware about where hands are. Hands kill, right? If you can't get to a weapon, you can't pull that weapon out, right? So we teach you, well, if the weapon's out, we're going to take care of the business. But if we get you before you get the weapon out, whether it's a knife, a gun, a stick, we're going to win the fight, because the training starts from the moment you encounter somebody, you're watching their body language. And that's a problem a lot of people don't do, is that in traditional martial arts, I remember taking karate. I throw a punch, my partner would block the punch. And then he would throw a punch. Fights aren't like that. No. Punches come from everywhere. And now with kids watching and playing video games and watching wrestling, they've learned so much stuff off of that. How to throw a kick, how to throw a punch. It wasn't like we were growing up, the only way you learn, everybody started in Taekwondo. I know I did. And I know
I did too. Yeah. Yeah.
And because that was what was going on at that time. Now it's very fortunate, like our kids program, we have kids that are learning Krav Maga at 5 or 6. I would have loved to start at that age. I started later in life, but I did the traditional stuff. I did the Taekwondo because that's what was available at that time. I think kids now have a big advantage because they have other options than we did when we were younger.
Absolutely. George, tell us a little bit about, because I get all the emails and everything. You're teaching, you're still continuing, it's business as usual for you, just everything's being taught remotely. And
Yes.
engaging kids is such an important thing. And I've seen a lot of the people who go to Alpha, proudly putting their kids back in their school outfits and having them train with you. How has it been engaging kids remotely throughout all this?
It's actually better than I expected. For us, we are known to be very detailed and very personal. We've always me and the other instructors, Diana, Al, and the other instructors, we like to be very personal with the kids. We like to pay attention to the details. We like to any student, not just the kids. And first time when I started teaching through Zoom, it was a little bit, we were like, how is this going to work? It was actually better than we expected. People, they responded very well. The kids responded fantastic. They're having a good time. I'm guessing everybody's basically tired of sitting in the house doing nothing. You can play video games for so long. You can watch TV so long, and after a while, you're like, you know what? I want to do something else. So the kids are doing a fantastic job, much better than we expected. Based on limited circumstances and limited resources that we have right now, right? You can only teach a kid through the camera so much and so many details, but it's much better than doing nothing or sitting at home. I can say that.
So just kind of building off of that, like what Al was saying earlier, you guys are constantly looking to adapt to the situation and, train based around that. In terms of your adult classes, what have been some of the things that you've been kind of focusing on to kind of simulate more real world situations, despite the fact that you can't meet in person?
So we do a lot of drills. We focus on our system is very well rounded. We basically teach our students to fight under any circumstances, multiple opponents on the ground, weapons, and so forth. Now, understanding that when you don't have a partner, you're kind of limited to what you can do and what you can practice. You know what I mean? So we're working a lot on strikes. We work a lot on footwork. We work a lot of reaction. We work a lot of conditioning right now because in the end, the strong body, it's always a good thing,
Absolutely.
So we're making the best out of the situation.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, like being healthy and sharpening your body right now is the most crucial thing. Steel sharpens steel, as you have said before. And I think the conditioning aspect right now, and I noticed you've been putting challenges up there. I've been trying to keep up with them. But 1,000 squats and 500 push-ups and this kind of stuff. That's part of the training. It's not the stuff and it's really redundant and mundane, but it's going to make all the other things come together so much more easily. The strikes are going to be much more fast and efficient and all that stuff. Yeah. So that's excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Al, as for you, you're going through this period right now where, you're in recovery and now you're kind of out of that and getting ready to go back to work. How do you feel about that? And what are you anticipating?
It's a challenge because prior, when this first started, people were afraid. They were coming out. The crime wasn't there. But now, as people are longer unemployed, people are starting to need money and food, and this is where the crime is going to jump up. And if people are going to be robbing, stealing, the majority of people are not going to be the regular criminals. It's going to be people that have a family that are going to rob you with a gun or a knife. Are there going to be still criminals taking advantage? Yes. There's always that element of society that prey on the weak. They're either the sheep, the wolf, or the sheepdog. What we try to do is make you the sheepdog. You can be the sheepdog to your family, to your community, to your neighborhood. We're never going to be the lamb. We're not going to be the sheep. So the thing is, as it gets, the longer it goes, the worse it gets. And what George was talking about, you're working out. Working out has shown that people are less likely, not to say they can't catch the virus, but people that are working out constantly, it's better for their system. So again, I don't agree with the governor right now. He's more worried about opening up horse racing and sports than the gyms. And when they asked him that, he said, well, as you can see, I don't go to the gym. Well, we already know that. All right. So people will say, if your body stays active, all right, you're going to be better in life. People are living longer. You watch a lot of these shows, people that are in their 70s. We have people that are in their 70s that will beat the shit out of somebody in their 30s.
Absolutely.
All right? Because, it's the mindset that we teach. There's guys in our class that I'll put them up in their 60s and 70s against a 30-year-old, and they'll wipe their ass with them because it's the mentality you teach. You know, you're only as old as you feel. And the thing is going back to work, these people, you can't control them. There's no way you can control people. I don't care how much law enforcement or military you have. When it gets to 75 degrees, people are going to be out. And I'm going to be one of those going to be out. You know, because George said, we're tired of being inside. I am so itching to hit something that it's not even funny. You know, I went to therapy today, and when she wasn't looking, I increased the weight because I'm tired of lifting these weights and not getting active. You know, I've been limited on what I could do, and slowly I'm going to get back into it. So I'm itching for the school to open so we can return to regular life. You know, it's great to teach adults and kids on Zoom, but that one-on-one, that cannot be duplicated. To be in a class with people and interact, it's not just the training, it's the interaction of every day. It's getting to know people on a one-on-one basis and making their weakness go away. And that's one thing that George, as the head instructor, he does that. He sees everybody's weakness and he creates a thing where the weakness is no longer a weakness. A lot of martial arts don't school that. I've been in many schools that they know you when it's payday. That's the only time they talk to you. And at traditional Korean arts, they know you on the 15th of every month. They know your name. They call you into the office. After that, they don't even know if you're alive or dead. And the difference it is communication with your students. It's a business, but it's also a relationship that we form.
Mm-hmm. And the thing too is, I going back to what you were saying about the immune system and building that up right now. There are statistics out there that are saying that this is the time to be healthy. This is not the time to, start eating because, the coronavirus in general, it hits people who have, who are obese, who have diabetes. That's why it is taking so many people. That's one of the many reasons why so many people in the U.S. are getting hit by it so hard. So I totally agree, and I'm totally for it. George, like you, I'm also in this situation right now where I can't go to work, and my business also requires me to engage people and, talk to them directly. How else am I going to be able to sell books? And the same thing with you. How else can you help people improve if you're closed? And I think that there are I think if people can go to Costco and they can go to Target and Walmart and they can all go and gather up and as a mass gathering, there should be no reason why you can't cautiously reopen and, train and run your business the way you need to do it. So kind of I'm sure you have a plan right now on reopening, and what are you going to do in order to kind of like keep people who are on the fence or people who are a little bit nervous at ease about what's going on currently?
So we have a plan for when we open. Hopefully we can open June 1st. We're looking forward to it.
Fingers crossed for you, sir.
Fingers crossed, exactly. So we're looking at other martial arts schools, successful martial arts school and gym all over the country. And we look to see what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. We have a protocol in place for number one. We always keep our school extremely clean. That's number one. Number two, we're going to up that. We're going to have, and we already had, but we up a little bit. The disinfectant is going to be all over the school. We have Lysol wipes all over the school. We're going to limit the access to locker rooms. We're not going to have access to a shower, at least for the beginning. We will recommend parents to wait for their kids in the car. We will have the 6 feet distance between bags. We have in place heavy bags that can be moved, as you guys already know. And we make sure that in the beginning, it's not going to be a contact between students. So we are trying to minimize and keep everybody safe. We're trying to minimize contact. We're trying to minimize exposure. And we are basically keeping an extremely safe and healthy environment while we're still doing all the exercises that we need to do to build the strength and so forth. So although we're going to be very limited in the beginning in certain aspects, we are prepared to work around the challenges, and we're going to make sure that the people are going to have a fantastic experience. They're going to be safe and healthy in our facility.
Absolutely. And, I think right now too, it's, again, with the summer, it's so important for people to engage and to do all these kinds of activities, because again, this is how we grow and this is how we build our immune systems. And I think that you have some great measures in place. And I also think it's time for us to start, like I said, the whole point of bringing you guys on was to talk about self-governance. And what I mean by that is not to run amok and cause complete anarchy, but to regulate yourself, because I think that's the only thing we have control over. We don't have control over rules and things being in place. We don't have control over someone coming up to us with a gun and, saying, give me your wallet, or, give me all your money, or whatever the case is. So it's important for you guys to instill that message of, hey, you need to take care of yourself. You need to be aware of what's going on around you. And, you guys are obviously being responsible about it. And as a student in your school for a few years, I can definitely say that your place is always clean. Even before all this shit happened, I never saw anything. I remember one time I left my mouth guard on accident, and George, you threw it out right away. And that's the right thing to do. I mean, you don't want shit like that. I think these kinds of problems happen when people aren't paying attention to, sanitization and things like that. And your school is very clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, speaking of that, self-governing, and, I came from Eastern European bloc, and as we see now, the modern society makes us weaker, makes us softer. I mean, that's the reality. It's more comfort. It's, we're jumping from the house to the car to whatever we need to go, and makes us in general weaker. I remember growing up as a kid, we walk everywhere. We walk half an hour to school. It didn't matter how big the snow was, right? Rain, snow, whatever.
George, you with us?
I think we lost him for a minute.
Yeah. Hang on. We'll come back. Yeah, I liked where he was going with that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Okay, keep
Awesome.
going. So you're saying, back when you were growing up in Eastern Europe, you were, going to school.
So we used to go to school by ourselves. Even I remember first grade, my parents allowed me to go by myself, to school. And from first to fifth grade, I remember I was taking public transportation, and me and my other friends, and coming back home together and so forth. Didn't matter how big the snow or the rain was, and we learned to overcome things. Nowadays, if it's a snow day, the kids that don't go to school. If it's the snow a little bit bigger, nobody drives. So we learn to become comfortable. We're comfortable. We seek comfort, which most of the time that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. However, that developed that weak mentality. There's always a problem. There's always, I can't do this today because it's raining. I can't do this today because it's snowing. Well, I noticed for many years, people are affected by weather. If you look even on Facebook, right? You see people, I can't believe today is raining. I can't believe. You can't change that, right? But you can change how you feel about it, And people have developed, unfortunately, a lot of times, that weak mentality. The rain affects them. The snow affects them. The sun in the summertime. People in the winter, they complain it's too cold. In the summer, they complain it's too hot. It is never good enough. You know what I mean? So developing that strong mindset, to me, is very important. regardless of weather, regardless of circumstances. Just like you said, we can control how the government is going to put the rules or when we're going to open or what's going to happen next, but we can control how we feel about it. We can control the mindset. We can control.
Now we lost him again.
Yeah.
Hang on a sec. He's going to come back. There we go. All right. We got you. Keep going.
You know what it is? It's those big arms. Move your arms a little bit. It's slowing down the TV.
Well, I think what, George was kind of alluding to, it's kind of the same thing going to you now, Al. It's like you don't get sick days as a police officer, or you get sick days, but you don't get snow days, is what I meant to say.
No, but what George said is absolutely correct. It's weather does predict a lot of stuff, and crime, weather does. I mean, when it's summer, it's hopping out here. If it's 40 below, you don't get a lot of calls. You get more domestic stuff inside, but come summertime, it's going to be very difficult to try to keep people from not going out. It's easy now. It's been easy because it's been raining, it's been snowing, it's been cold. But as soon if this weekend hits at 70, people are going to be out. They're going to be, and you can't stop that. It's impossible. The mayor thinks that she can control it. Nobody in law enforcement, I don't feel right telling people, hey, you got to go inside. Because I wouldn't want to be told that. If you're spending time with your family, God forsake, you're in a park exercising, I'm going to tell you to go home and watch TV. I mean, it's crazy. But of course, weather does affect crime. And when it's cold, there's less crime. I'm not going to tell you there is no crime, but come summer, it's busy. Holidays, it affects it as far as crime. Domestics are up when people are inside, And one thing we got to remember that the bad guy is not always clothed. It could be somebody in your building. It could be a family member that's attacking you. So you got to understand attacks come from everywhere. And it's simple. For me, what I've been doing now is I'm doing a lot of walking. And it's amazing what I see and what other people see. I'm always scanning to my left, to my right. And it's part of it is being a police officer, but the other part is training. One thing that we tell our students is be aware of your surroundings. What is not right in the picture? Why are people doing certain things? Why did somebody give you that double look? Why did they cross the street? Why did they put their hand in their pocket? That, for law enforcement, it's easy. We practice it. For the common person, unless you train that, and you're not going to do it. And I'll tell you, I've done many martial arts, and the thing that, to me, and people can say, well, this, that. We are complete because beside the awareness, we are current to what we're teaching. It's like George says, if we were teaching 500 years ago, if somebody attacks me with a spear, okay, I have a defense for it. But I doubt unless we're out in the jungle somewhere, I'm going to get attacked with a spear. But I guarantee you a knife is very common. And everybody has a knife.
Absolutely.
And one thing is a lot of people are training in, concealed carry, which is great. But how many people actually train how to protect you from getting your gun taken? Because remember, everybody has a gun until somebody takes it away from you, right? And that's something that we also address. Because people think, well, I'm concealed carry. I'm really big and bad. No, you're not. You're about 2 minutes away from getting your gun taken away from you. And then what? Because people get that false sense of security. Man, I got that gun next to me. Nobody's going to take it. Well, remember, we're always watching your body language, which is going to tell me before you actually pull that gun out, you're going to give away a sign. We went back to earlier, hand skill, body language. So we don't only teach, well, if they have the gun in front of you, if attacks always came from the front, man, that'd be great. Teach one-way attacks. I remember learning Krav Maga early and then going back and relearning it again with George. I've never seen so many goddamn gun defenses I've ever seen in my life in the last 5 years. Because, again, you have to keep current with the time. It used to be they attack you from the front, from the side, from behind. Gun attacks don't happen like that, And if you don't practice it right, you never get good at it. It's like anything. To be the best, you have to practice.
And it's perfect practice makes perfect.
And I think this thing of being locked down sucks. But I think when people go back, they're going to be so hungry to train that you're going to have to be beaten by a stick. We're going to have to keep people out of the school so we can have more people in class.
I'm excited. I can't wait to come back. I'm
glad you're back.
Absolutely. Now here's something.
My foot misses your groin.
Yes, it does. And I have been kicked in the groin by you before, so I remember it very well.
It's out of love. It's always out of love.
I know.
George has kicked me many times over the years.
Now, Al, just one more question for you. So going back to the whole thing of paying attention to your surroundings, I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was getting cabin fever, and I just grabbed my kid and we drove to the city. We stayed in the car the whole time, and we just drove to the city and just drove around a little bit just to see what was going on. And here's what I noticed when I drove in the city. I noticed a lot of construction workers were not wearing masks. I noticed that there were a lot of people out on the street. Bums were still on the street too. And it almost seems like nothing changed. It was like, it's just Christmas. It's just that every day is Christmas in Chicago, and you have much less traffic, but there's still people out on the streets. There's still people going on and out there. And I think one of the things that has got a lot of Illinoisans, particularly me, aggravated is the fact that people are still out there. Our mayor and our governor are saying, hey, we are trying to do this to protect all our citizens, but it seems like they're not really paying much attention to you guys. They expect you to come out to work and wear masks and have hand sanitizer, but you guys didn't even have access to that kind of stuff.
No, and I told you earlier, our first hand sanitizer they gave us was 8 years old, expired. And, it's very hard to work with gloves on. You wear gloves when you have to deal with blood. But other than that, when I go back to work, I'm going to have the mask if I interact with somebody in a location. But other than that, I'm not going to wear that. It's impossible to wear that 8 hours a day. It's impossible to wear rubber gloves. And I got to tell you one thing. I used to do it when I was young in this job. It was so cool that you get to a scene and you get those black gloves on, you put those gloves on. But one thing you forget is when you're putting gloves on, that tells the bad guy one thing. It's showtime, right? So I learned to get rid of my gloves and hit bare hands. No warning, right? Because everybody wants to put the gloves on before we start fighting.
Yep.
That's not realistic anymore. People watch as we train, bad guys do train. Watch prison videos from the courtyard. They are training to disarm law enforcement.
Yep.
They're all for that.
I mean, George can tell you how many people he's trained over the period of time.
I was actually
in the military.
Yeah, I was just going to get into that. So George, you actually train SWAT cops in Chicago. You work with them privately, and and they train us as well. So what are the kinds of things that what kind of information are they sharing with you? Because these guys are actually out in the field. They're taking their experiences and they're bringing them back to you, and you're helping them sharpen their skills so that when they get back to work, they're safe and they're able to perform efficiently.
So we work with a lot of officers from different departments, and our goal is to give them physical and mental tools. Physical, obviously, the physical skill, the strength, the speed, the knowledge, right? What to do in certain situation, and the mental skill, that never give up mentality. Because in the end, there is no cookie cutter scenario. You can say this is A, this is B, this is C, this is D. We give them a specific skill, but then we put them to stress drill. We start them from 0 intensity to 100% intensity right away. So the goal is to teach them how to adjust to any kind of circumstances. Because you can train for one specific situation, just like I mentioned a while ago. You can address one specific situation, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a scenario where things change rapidly, and now you have no answer for it. So the goal is to learn to adjust under circumstances, to make the right decision, to have the right mindset, the right skill set. Now, there is no one magic pill. You learn this and you're going to do this. It's learning to build the skill under stress, constantly testing that skill. You learn a specific technique, take it to under stress. Let's see how it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, why it doesn't work? Let's fix it. Let's improve it. Let's get better, and so forth. So that is our goal. Like Al mentioned a while ago, there's a lot of circumstances that police officers and SWAT team members are encountering. So there is no one size fits all. In the end, our goal is to build that mental skill and physical skill through drills, through stress drills, through specific techniques, and so forth.
And Al, going into this a little bit, I remember when I took a class with you once, you were telling me that law enforcement, and I know that some of the students that I've trained with are also law enforcement. There is no ongoing training for outside action in law enforcement. I mean, you have your basic training, but after that, it's kind of like they set you loose. And you've told me situations too where.
Well, yeah. And now, because we're under the consent decree, things have changed a lot. I just knocked over the water over everything, but things have changed. Yeah, I mean, it's getting better, but the training for me has started in the last 4 years. Prior to that, it was what you learned in the academy. And whatever you watch in a video would work. Things are, because we're mandated to train 40 hours a year on some type of training, whether it's hand-to-hand, whether it's firearms. LEMART is a great training. All law enforcement now are supposed to be first responders. If you were to get shot or your partner gets shot, you have to know how to put a tourniquet on, stop the bleeding. Or if a civilian got shot, we're responsible to do that. That's some great training. You talk about under stress. Some of the drills they did was they put you in a room, you had your tourniquet ready to go. They turned the light on, turned the lights off, and you had 30 seconds. They told you were shot in your right leg. You got to put the tourniquet in the dark. And most of us got it under 30 seconds. But, that's training that we were never done before. I mean, tourniquets, as far as for me, maybe George could fill you in on that when he was in the military, but we never were worried about stopping somebody's blood from bleeding out. This is something that's happened recently because of the attacks on police officers and on civilian, that if we could, as first responders, stop somebody's bleeding, we can give them a chance to live. And that was stuff that was done in the military during war, and I'll let George answer that part.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, George. Feel free to
So
jump in.
That's tremendous knowledge. So we do a lot of times. We have a couple of seminars where we actually address a couple of issues. Number one, from a carry, conceal, or law enforcement point of view, weapon retention. Number two, weapon defense. And number three, the tourniquet or stopping the bleed technique. So the idea is not just the fact that you know how to disarm a gun or how to use your own gun. It's what's next. And I found tremendous value learning how to put a tourniquet, learning how to stop the bleeding. And this is also very good knowledge for people who are not involved in regular training, or they're not law enforcement, or they're not carry conceal. Just imagine yourself traveling with your family outside Illinois, going to Wisconsin, for example, and being in a remote area where help is 45 minutes away, and one of your kids break a leg or have a really bad wound, and having the knowledge of stopping the blood, stopping the bleeding, and giving him that first.
Sorry, guys.
Go ahead, George.
Responder on the spot, and helping your family member or helping your kid in that particular moment. Imagine that your kid has a really bad wound, and the fastest hospital is 45 minutes away or an hour away or things like that. Now what? So that's why I find that this is tremendous knowledge. Going to law enforcement, going people under real stress, right? Getting shot, getting stabbed, and so forth. Learning how to stop the bleeding, learning how to address the issue, increase your chance of survival. And we see that in the military a lot, and we see that in the law enforcement a lot. Learning both sides of the coin, I find it has tremendous value.
I agree with you. And it's funny because when we go on social media, everything is so polarized. And we never think to ourselves, like I noticed a lot of people kind of like pigeonhole all police officers as being, guys who just want to go and, enforce the law and, shoot people left and right. And I'm not saying that there aren't bad cops out there, as I'm sure you guys know too, but there's also a lot of good cops who really believe in that they get into this field because they want to help people. And what I think is really great about the environment you create with Alpha is the fact that it is a place where law enforcement and civilians can come together and learn from each other. And I think honestly, learning how to put on a tourniquet, I think that is every parent should know how to do that. That is one of those things that, like, we live in a time right now where having those skills is extraordinarily important. Mm-hmm. So Al, question for you.
Yeah.
Now you're like, you're saying that they've kind of like upped the training a little bit, but you're also kind of like getting ready to, get back into the saddle as well. So in terms of like your job, you could be sitting for 6 hours and maybe your shift's about to end, and then all of a sudden you get that fucking call, and now you have to react. So
yeah, I mean, that it could be 8 hours, aborted, and 20 minutes of your life, and you're the fight of your life, or it could be the vice versa. I mean, you never know when it's going to happen. You could be sitting talking, and somebody gets shot in front of you. You have to act. And that's when your skills come through. You're not the one calling the police. You are the police and have to handle those situations. I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me where I've encountered somebody just getting shot, and it's more than just calling the ambulances, controlling the scene, or people fighting. I love firemen. So I have great fireman friends. I wouldn't want to do their job, but I don't think they want to do my job. I wouldn't run into a fire, but I mean, you have to go where people are fighting with knives or guns or sticks. You have to go in there and stop that, And if you don't have the right mindset, it's not going to happen. The training that they give you in the academy is basic training. It's like the military. Once you decide to get into a field and train and be specific, you're much better, right? But a lot of people in law enforcement, that's the problem, is they don't train. They think that the weeks in the academy is going to get them for real life situation. And people don't comply to the regular people. You tell them to do something, they do it. The majority of society that has dealt with the police or has been incarcerated, they're not afraid of us. People think, oh, the uniform's going to stop it. No, it's the way you act, the way you carry yourself. If you give somebody an order and you don't follow up, well, now all of a sudden you have a problem, not only for yourself, but for somebody else. So you have to continually train, whether it's, you can lift weights all day long. I've seen guys that are very big get taken down by somebody smaller than them, much skilled into self-defense. If you can combine both, it's a great thing. But a lot of guys depend on, well, I can lift 500 pounds. Okay, well, I'm going to take your knee out, and now the 500 pounds is not going to do anything for you. So you have to be versatile. So what we do is great. You get strong, and you also are flexible and be able to fight. I know guys that have come to train with us that are really, really strong, and all of a sudden they realize, I got to change the way I work out because I'm depending on muscle and not speed or not using your noggin. Your greatest muscle is your brain. Your brain can get you in any situation as long as you're trained. And the thing with the tourniquet and everything is the reason they started training us was that people, when they see blood, they shut down. I don't know how many times officers have gotten a minor cut and they panic and start to bleed. You get on a scene with a bad guy getting shot, he could be shot 8 times and he's talking there smoking a cigarette about what he's going to do when he gets out of the hospital because they're just bred that way. We're not taught. We're taught we see a cut, we got to go run to mom and say, Mom, look, I got a cut on my finger. And it's time. That time is over. Tourniquets are great, but you got to train that mentality, the self-defense, the first aid. That's all, especially if you have young kids. Imagine, like George says, that your kid falls off a swing and cracks his head open, and you're waiting for the nearest hospital to take care of that wound, or he breaks his leg. We have to be versatile in physical training. Mental training, is very important. More people lose a fight because their mind gave out instead of their body.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Now, as we're kind of coming to the last 10 minutes of the show, I have one more thing I want to talk to you guys about: engagement. And what I mean by engagement is knowing when to get involved and knowing when to kind of see what you can do to keep the situation from escalating. And I think that's something that we all want to make sure that happens. Like, it's one thing to carry a gun or a knife on you, but to actually use it, that's a pretty serious fucking thing. You're going to find yourself in a situation where you stab somebody, they bleed out and die, and suddenly, even though you were defending yourself, you're still charged with murder, and you have no way to prove it. So how important is it that when you get into situations like this, that you do everything possible to not do everything possible not to find yourself in that situation? When you are, what is the best way to react and make sure that you get away safely, and that, you know, the bad guy's not coming after you and causing harm to you or your loved ones?
Well, for me, I never go out to work thinking I'm going to kill somebody today. All right. That's not my mentality. Training, again, it goes back to training, is being aware of your surroundings, being aware of body language. You know, when stuff happens, for us, at least as law enforcement, the bad guy has a plan. They're going to kill us. They know who we are. We wear a uniform. You know, they have a plan. They're going to attack us. Now, again, it's the lack of training. It's not paying attention to body language. I don't know of anybody that can attack you without giving it away with body language. Watch the animals when they're going to attack somebody. The tiger, the lion, they always have a sudden pattern of before they attack. And as human beings, we do the same thing. You just don't punch somebody while moving your body. So it's very important to understand the body. But when the fight comes to you and you're cornered, you have to fight. You know, the thing about, you can only talk to somebody with a gun so long before they shoot you. All right. If you are able to disarm somebody and control them, that's fine. I put up a video not too long ago about a woman. A guy walked up to a crowd and grabbed a woman. She had a gun, shot him in the chest, right? He fell to the ground. She took cover behind a car, and the car moved. And then she came up, kicked the gun away, kept him at gunpoint. For me, I thought that was a win. A lot of people said, well, she could have done this, could have done that. Unless you're in that shoes, you don't know what you would do, right? And I guarantee you that George has been situations in the military where everybody can play Monday morning quarterback. So what you're saying to me is, I react to a situation. If you pull a gun at me, I would hope that I have my gun out, but most of the times I'm not, because you're going to catch me off guard. If I'm going to a gun fight, I'm going to have my gun out. If I'm going to a knife fight, I'm probably going to have my gun out, but with other choices. So training is key. What do you think, George?
I agree. So we're always talking about awareness, and as Al mentioned, and going back to your question, Onrie, when and how do we engage? What are the circumstances, right? So we always teach, number one, awareness of your surroundings. Being aware of your surroundings, doesn't matter if you are law enforcement or you are a civilian. Being aware of your surroundings gives you more option, gives you more time to react. Now, your best option can be run away. Your best option can be move in the car and drive away. Your best option can be engage your opponent in your own terms and so forth. But being aware of your surrounding gives you options. So now going to the second level, which is you are in a self-defense scenario when your life is on the line. Now your physical and mental skill comes into picture. Some people are going to say, well, but I don't have a skill. Well, that's a problem. You don't have the physical skill. You don't have the mental skill. That's a problem. We also saw many times people without physical skill, meaning they have no clue how to punch, kick, and so forth, but they had that tremendous will to survive that allows them to overcome the situation. We see that many times, right? So that will to survive, that never give up mentality, it's extremely important. And of course, going back to learning how to defend yourself or learning what to do in XYZ situation, that gives you more chances to survive. Now, make no mistakes. There is no magic pill. There is no guarantee. I always tell my students that. Doesn't mean that you learn this and you're going to do that. No. It's you have more choice. You have more chance of survival. You have more tools in your toolbox. That gives you more options. And everybody likes percentage nowadays, right? With Corona and everything else. So basically is your chances, your percentage that you survive that situation increase tremendously. So that's our goal. Now, going back to when do you engage and how? First of all, you have to understand the law in your state and your city, right? Every state is different in the United States. Some states have a little bit more lenient law than others. So you have to understand your self-defense skill based on your
based on what the state regulations are.
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that is the idea. So understanding that in the end you have to be able to articulate that your life and your integrity was on the line, or your family life or family integrity was on the line, or somebody else's life, which is why you engage. So you have to be able to articulate that. And that's very important. And I'm going to allow Al to take it from here and to get in more into that, the law aspect. But you have to be able to articulate why you did what you did.
Right, you do have to be able to articulate what's going on. But one thing we have great that we didn't have 20 years ago was cameras. Cameras are everywhere, and I'm a strong believer of cameras. A lot of law enforcement don't like them. I love them because cameras don't lie. As you said earlier, well, how do you, I did this and he did this, and before you had no proof. Now, anywhere you are in the city of Chicago, especially downtown, if you're at a shopping mall, at a store, even if you're at a phone place, they all have cameras. So it's the bad guy story, your story, and the camera story. You know, there's always three stories. It's which one is going to come up, right? And if you are worried about, well, what's going to happen if nobody saw what happened, you already lost the fight. If somebody, you have to be ready to fight, but you also, like George says, maybe running is the best option. Maybe driving away, but it changes as the environment changes. You could do one thing one way if you're by yourself. Now, if you're with your spouse, your kids, now your options are limited. Maybe you do have to engage to save somebody else's life. What one option you have for yourself changes as the environment changes, right? Laws, there are laws. There are going to be times that I'm not going to tell you that if you end up in a fight and one of the persons on the ground and the police show up, you are going to be put in handcuffs for a few minutes until we find out the facts, right? There's what he says, you said, and what the camera and the crowd says. So if you start worrying about, I'm not going to engage because what if I go to jail? Or I'd rather go to jail, for a moment until I figure things out than going to the morgue, right? We all say as law enforcement military, we'd rather what? Be tried by 12 than carried by 6.
Yep.
Most people, by nature, we're good citizens, right? But everybody's got that point where you break. If somebody was going to hurt your child, I know the beast would come out of you, right? And it's just that's a fact. The thing is, you also have to learn how to turn it off. If somebody comes at you with a knife and you disarm them and you stop their head 35 times, that's going to be a problem. How do you explain that? But if you disarm them, kick them in the groin, break their nose, disarm them, wait for the police, that's acceptable.
That makes a big difference. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. And not only that, I can't wait to come back and train with you guys and continue to learn from you. It is just the passion you guys have for what you do. It just comes through, and it's got me jacked. I fucking hate being on lockdown. I cannot wait to come and train. Yes. And Al,
almost there, guys.
Yes, almost there. And I wish you guys all the best. Al, please, what were you going to say?
Thank you for having us on the show. I look forward to training again. And remember, guys, Alpha Krav Maga, we're located in Norfolk, Illinois. Very simple. You tried the rest, now you try the best.
Right on.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Onrie.
Yes.
Good to see you, brother.
Yes, good to see you too. I'll be back there. Good luck with everything. I'll see you guys.
All right.
All right.
Peace.
Yes. What a great episode from two very knowledgeable people who I am so looking forward to training with again. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend. I also hope that you guys took what you could from this, and the things that you feel apply to you. By all means, these you're getting information from guys who know what they're talking about. And for those of you who are in the area who want to come and train at Alpha Krav Maga, you'll find me over there. I'm going to be going back there just as soon as the doors open and things are up and running again. So, all right, guys, I'll see you next week. We got brand new guests. We're going to get back on the track with comics and talking to comic book guests. Thanks for tuning in today. And as always, onward to victory.